Do you remember that episode of Full House?
Michelle falls off a horse.
And she like has amnesia for a few days.
Yes.
I don't know why I think about that episode constantly.
Shows like that, I feel like amnesia was a common theme in like sitcoms for some reason, because it was something that I was worried about. Like that I...
50 First Dates.
50 First Dates. I was something where I was like, is this going to happen? It was the same thing with like quicksand. I was like, is this something we need to be talking about?
People coming up to you asking if you want to buy drugs.
No one ever comes up to me offering me free drugs. Nobody I know has had amnesia. And then also like Bermuda Triangle. I feel like everybody was talking about it when I was younger.
I was like, oh my God, I hope I never go there.
I know. I was like, why aren't we doing something?
We need to put policies in place.
We should be doing more about the amnesia and the quicksand and the Bermuda Triangle. Why aren't we?
Have you ever wondered what it's like to perform an autopsy?
Ever wanted to know how accurate your favorite crime drama is?
If you're brave enough,
Join us inside the morgue. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Inside the Morgue. We're your favorite pathology duo, Jess and Alice. And first off, we want to start off by thanking YUNKJunk for producing and editing our content. Dylan, where can the people find you if they're interested in starting a podcast?
I'm not too hard to find.
Nice.
All you got to do to find me is shoot me an email, dylan@yunkjunk.com. Let's talk about some podcast ideas and let's make it happen. It's a lot of fun, and we are always looking for more people to join the YUNKJunk family.
We love it here, so you should join us. Not in like a culty way, but just join us. So this week we're diving into the Christmas spirit, and we watched Coroner Season 3, Episode 9 and 10, titled Christmas Eve, and guess what the next one is? Christmas Day. And we'll be getting into how accurate organs look in TV shows, different types of amnesia, and tapeworms. So let's get into it.
All right, we open on a couple sitting, like they're setting the dinner table, they're decorating their house, getting the Christmas spirit. And then we see this person kind of like walking around on the street in their PJs, and like they're in a robe, and the robe at like the front of him is just covered in blood, and he's holding an ornament. So then we cut back to the house with the couple. I
do want to say one quick thing. While the couple is setting the dinner table and everything, there's just this shot of the husband putting this like really, it's not even a star or an angel, so I don't know why it was going like on top of the tree, but it's this giant pointy ornament, and as soon as I saw it I was like, someone's getting stabbed with that. That's
they spent too much time to focus on that. So back at the house we find the couple dead, and it appears that maybe they're just dead, as most of these TV shows start out.
Every one of these shows starts.
It appears that maybe this man that was walking around with blood on him killed the couple. The couple's names are Jen and Johnny. John and Jenny.
Maybe they went by Jen and Johnny. We don't know.
And their neighbor was the one that found them. She was talking to the detectives, and she says that they're wonderful people. Jenny was struggling. She was strangled with the Christmas lights, it looks like. And then the star of the show, our coroner, Jenny Cooper, she is looking at this woman's body, and she says that there's ligature marks straight across the neck, under the Adam's apple, petechia in her face and on her eyes. And there was like scratching and bruising on her neck. And so like all of those things are pretty accurate with ligature strangulation.
Yeah, so we're going to give a green flag for that. And I'm just noticing this as you're saying it. I wonder if she made a point to say the positioning of where the mark was on the neck. And so when I was doing my master's, my final paper was on how in a forensic investigation you look for certain types of trauma in a homicidal strangulation versus suicidal strangulation. And one of the markers is the positioning of a ligature mark, because when a person hangs themselves, the ligature is higher up above the Adam's apple. But if somebody is doing it from behind, it typically goes a little lower.
It's lower.
So that is a good detail if that was intentional. That I just caught that now. I like that. So green flag.
Yeah, green flag for all of that, because I think that her description of just like how the strangulation is like looks, it is pretty accurate, and I gotta say I love it.
And they mentioned petechia.
Yeah, and if you don't know what petechia is, it's pinpoint hemorrhaging, like broken little blood vessels that you would get, like on your face, like kind of like where you're like where you would put blush, like the atoms. What am I saying?
The apples are your
Apple, yeah.
apples are your teeth.
That is like my train of thought tonight is gone.
That's because the word Adam's apple was earlier in the phrase.
And you'd also get it in your eyes, like underneath your eyelids. So like, when we have strangulation cases, like hanging cases, we always flip the eyelids up to see if there is petechiae in there, because that's a good indicator in those types of cases. And also if like it's also depending on the type of hanging, like if it's partially suspended, all of the blood will, and you're not fully like off of the ground, you're still somewhat like your feet are still on the ground, but you are hanging. All of the blood will pool down into your legs, and you'll get hemorrhaging and petechiae down like on the bottom half of your legs there.
It's also, petechia isn't unique to strangulation. You can see it in other instances as well. It's just when strangulation is a concern, you look for it in certain places, like in the eyes or around the face and neck. So she did mention it, and got to give a green flag. We got to give her props.
So on the man's body, he had multiple stab wounds to the torso. And judging by the amount of blood loss that he had, the stab wound was next to his heart, and it's probably he probably died of exsanguination. So the entry wounds are covered in glitter, and it appears, that the weapon used was an ornament found near the body. They bagged this ornament as evidence.
Get those round ornaments. Round ornaments that are plastic and hard to break, so nobody can kill you with them.
They also noticed that there's something odd in the man's ear. And then their son, Aaron, comes home, and he's in disbelief that his parents are dead. And then Aaron asks about Caleb, his brother. And he's like, hey, is Caleb okay? And everyone's like, what?
Nobody knew there was a Caleb. So the detectives do eventually find Caleb in an arcade covered in blood. He was the man wandering around with the ornament in the beginning. So he has no weapons on him, but they do find an ornament that he's holding, and the detective goes to ask him a few questions, but Caleb is like unresponsive and just starts singing "Oh Christmas Tree." He doesn't know what's going on, and eventually the detective is able to snap him out of it and realizes what's happening, and he doesn't confess to anything, but he does ask if he missed Christmas brunch. So it seems like he does not have any recollection of how he got blood on him, what happened to his parents. So they bring him to the precinct to further question him, and they're thinking he has a medical history of memory loss, especially after some type of trauma. So in the morgue, they have Jenny and John's bodies on the table, ready for autopsy. And the techs and everybody working there are in full PPE, which we do love to see. So we're going to give an obvious green flag. They do it really well in this show.
Yeah.
They don't half-ass
all of the gowns, and so like they wear the yellow isolation gowns, and they also have another gown on top of that. And they always wear masks and like face shields, which I think is cool. Yeah.
Masks, face shields, hairnets. They double glove, and I'm like,
they got it right.
They got it right. Whereas CSI, they barely wear any PPE. It drives me nuts every time. So after a doctor talks to Caleb, he believed that he's suffering from something called dissociative amnesia. So traumatic events like war, abuse, or extreme violence can often lead to this. Your brain just blocks out the traumatic event. So yeah, even witnessing certain types of trauma can lead to this. And we're going to get into this a little bit later after we break down the episode. So if Caleb is faking this, they need to do some tests, some psychological evaluation to figure out if he has a real memory of what happened or if he's just faking his amnesia.
So at the autopsy, I also got to give a green flag to the stab wounds on John's body. Overall, they look really good. They look really realistic, and the color is right. So yeah, green flag for that. So the tech / doctor person, I'm not really sure what these people's roles are.
Yeah, we jump into these shows with like no.
I don't know
We jump
anybody.
in like season 3. I've only seen a handful of other episodes of this show, never in sequential order. I don't know any of these people, but they're doing a great job.
Jenny Cooper, that's it.
Yeah.
But this person working in the morgue is measuring the wounds, which is also an accurate thing that something that we would do during autopsy for sure. This can help determine like what weapon was used, if the same weapon was used for all of the wounds. So another green flag for that.
I wanted to point something out here. So they use the metric system because they're in Canada. We're in the US, and I've noticed a lot of our doctors, if they're measuring external injuries, will often do it in inches because sometimes they have to describe those injuries to a jury. And in the US, we use inches instead of centimeters. So it's much easier for a jury to understand. You say like, oh, this was 2 inches wide instead of X amount of centimeters. I can't do the conversion in my head. Don't ask me. So, so I thought that was interesting because I noticed they said centimeters and I forgot they were in Canada for a minute. And I was like, oh, they're not in the US. Like, we're the only ones who use inches.
Americans
but for
are dumb.
other types of measurements, sometimes we'll use centimeters because it's scientific. But
everything internally is always in centimeters.
Yeah, internally we'll use centimeters. Yeah.
So back to that weird thing that was found in his ear, they pull out like a weird object. There was no bleeding or bruising in the ear canal, so that means that it was put there post-mortem. So one of the detectives is with Jenny Cooper, and he has the ornament that they got from Caleb. When they found Caleb, he was holding it. And the ornament is an angel with a broken wing. And this object from the ear is the missing piece of that broken wing. So it appears that Caleb maybe did kill his parents and shoved the ornament in his dad's ear.
This is a different ornament than the stabby ornament.
Yeah.
2 ornaments. 2 stabby ornaments. See,
Don't get stabby ornaments for Christmas.
Don't get stabby ornaments.
That's not part of the Christmas spirit.
Definitely not.
So after talking to the other brother, Aaron, they learn that Caleb has a violent history. Little things often set him off. And his dad used to take Caleb hunting, and that's when he noticed it. And like he would kind of like say like the men need to have a certain appearance. So I think taking him hunting was kind of like getting him to be a certain way that his dad wanted to be.
Type thing. Yeah.
And there were only 4 places set at the dinner table for Christmas brunch for John, Jenny, Aaron, and Flora, who is the neighbor who found the couple. So Aaron says his parents must have disinvited Caleb, and that's what made him snap. And it appears that Aaron and Flora have a little bit of a weird relationship.
There was definitely some sexual tension there, right?
They were awkward to watch.
There was some awkward tension. I was like, are you dating? Like, are you dating?
Did you do something in the past?
She was able to. Oh my God, wait. So Aaron was already at the precinct being questioned in an entirely different room. Jenny comes in, not knowing Aaron is there, is talking to Jenny for a little bit. And I'm sorry, Flora comes in, doesn't know Aaron is there, talking to Jenny. And then Flora like sniffs the air and is like, is Aaron here? And she's like, what? She's like,
and at that point, I thought that she was just going to be a psycho.
What?
I thought she was going to be a complete psychopath just from that moment.
I mean, it's a little weird. It's a little weird. She's like, I can smell him. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
Ma'am?
Yeah. They had something weird going on. And they never get into it. We never find out what it is.
No, they gloss over it.
Don't know what it was. So back at the house, detectives are in the kitchen and they find a locked drawer, and also the knife block is just empty. So there's no knives. They just have an empty knife block, which seems odd. So the detective finds his lockpicking kit and he picks a lock and he finds money in envelopes and a little black book. And he also finds just a ton of knives in that drawer. So it seems like John had been making cash payments to dozens of people monthly for years. And the black book only had first names and dollar amounts. And one of the names that they had in the book was Flora. And she had been getting $1,000 a month starting in June of 1999. So what happened in June of 1999? We gotta know. I don't know. I should have done the math for how much money that is. Like now, if she was getting $1,000 a month, it's too much.
Oh, yeah, too much.
Too much. I mean, I'd accept it though. I'd be like, sure. give
No
me.
questions asked. I'd
No
accept
questions
it.
asked. Sure. Back at the autopsy, they found cysts on John's liver, and they're sending samples to the lab. So this is a cool fact because sometimes we'll send stuff out for additional testing. Like we don't have everything in-house. One of the things we'll do occasionally is histology. So we'll take a section of an organ that the doctor wants to investigate further, and we send it out to get made into microscopic slides. And then the doctor will be able to investigate it microscopically and find out if there's any abnormalities that you're not able to see grossly and you can only see microscopically. So seems like that's what they're doing with this cyst. So got to give a green flag for this liver also, because I got to say, it's like the best fake liver I've seen.
It looks so good. It was like glossy. It looked like it had the right texture.
The color and texture looked so good, and it's just like so surprising compared to shows where it
was also the right shape. Like a lot of times the liver, I don't know what these other shows do, but they just don't even Google what a liver shape is.
To give credit, this show was in 2021, and a lot of this, at least I always think of CSI when I'm thinking of fake looking organs, and that's like early 2000s. Everything was fake in the everything looked fake in the early 2000s. But yeah, this one looks really impressive. So back to what happened in June of 1999. Jenny is for some reason the one interrogating, not interrogating, I guess, just trying to get more info out of Aaron and Flora with the detective. And they say that Caleb would have these outrages, and John wanted to have the family to have a certain appearance and thought boys should act a certain way. And so that kind of would agitate him and cause him to have these emotional outbursts. So it was Aaron's birthday one year, and Flora gave him a red bike as a present. And red was Caleb's favorite color, and for some reason that caused him to have an outburst, and he pushed Flora down a flight of stairs. The families, Flora's family and Aaron and Caleb's family, didn't want to involve the police, so that's when John started paying Flora to keep her quiet so she would stay in their lives. Aaron also didn't know Flora was getting paid. He seemed hurt by that. But dude, she recognized the smell of you, so I think she also likes you. Like,
just a little. She likes you.
I think she likes him. So
Caleb,
it seems like what?
Oh, sorry.
No, what are you saying?
No, Caleb's just like. I feel like he's getting so much like bad blood from all of this. He didn't deserve anything. He's just a kid.
He tells his side of the story. Don't worry. Don't worry, Jess. I don't know if you know this, but we're going to get into that.
I feel bad for him. I always feel bad for the person in the shows where they're like trying to make out a monster.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're really throwing him under the bus hard. And that's like a key in like these types of shows. For me, at least when I'm watching and they're like really, really hounding that it's this person, I'm like, he didn't do it. My brother has a rule where if he's watching a crime procedural and he's like, if we're not at least, depending on the length of the show, he's like, if we're not at least 40 minutes in, we haven't met the killer yet. we don't know who it is yet. If they're hinting at it someone before that time mark, it's not the killer.
It's not them.
And no, it's right like 99% of the time. So it just looks like Caleb hurts a lot of people that he loves, and that's why John was paying money to so many people.
So he's in a lot of mental distress, and while he's in the facility getting tested, he takes a doctor hostage, and his only request is to talk to Jenny, the coroner.
He holds him to like a pen against his neck.
Yeah, the
but
doctor
it's like
left a notebook and a pen.
Metal tip. Yeah.
So the doctor left a notebook and a pen there, and he quick grabbed it and took the doctor hostage.
Yeah.
So he wants to know the truth, if he is the one that murdered them or not. Dr. Cooper says that, yes, it does look like he did based on the autopsy. He breaks down. He lets the doctor go, and the detectives handcuff him and take him away. So that kind of ends Christmas Eve.
Yeah. I also just want to say these shows make it seem like this kind of stuff happens a lot. The doctor that was being held hostage was like, wow, does this happen often in your line of work? And she's like, oh, yeah. And I'm like,
all the time.
No. I don't know where
This
you
is my
work in
third
Canada.
hostage this week.
Yeah, I know, right? You're not even my only hostage negotiation today.
So we kind of move into Christmas Day, and we see Flora cleaning up the aftermath of the crime scene.
She's
Shortly
like,
after,
she's losing it while she's cleaning up this crime scene.
yeah, she is like going through it.
She's mopping and dancing to a Christmas song. I forget which Christmas song it is. But she's like crying and laughing and mopping the floor, but then throwing the mop at the Christmas tree. Like, she's not okay. She shouldn't be doing this. She shouldn't be the one doing this.
She's not in the right headspace.
No. On Christmas? No.
So shortly after, detectives and police go to the house looking for Caleb. So obviously it appears that he either like got out or escaped. And we see Flora's
they never
dead
explain how
body.
that happens either, though.
Right. They
just like, he
gloss over
escaped.
that immediately.
He escaped
And I
the
feel like
psych
we
ward.
should have had some like background of like him getting out or like them showing it instead of just being like, oh my God, we got to find him.
They would have had, yeah. They probably didn't know how to
Do it.
do it because he would have had beefed up security after holding a doctor hostage with a
Right.
pen to his neck. And then next episode, oh, he's gone. I don't know.
So detectives come in, and then we see Flora's dead body in the same spot that Jenny and John's bodies were in on Christmas Eve. Hers looks like her intestine maybe was ripped out at first glance. It was like spread throughout the room, and then Jenny
But it
Cooper
was
comes in.
moving.
It was weird.
It was gross.
It was like the weirdest scene I've ever watched.
It was gross.
But then Jenny Cooper comes in to investigate the scene, and she's like, "Oh, it's a tapeworm. What do you mean?"
And she's
It was so random.
She's like, the tapeworm goes all the way to the other side of the room from where the body is, and Jenny's just like slowly putting it in a bag. Like,
oh my God, I got to talk about that. Okay, this is like the longest tapeworm that she's seen, that I've seen, everyone has seen. And she's putting it in this plastic bag, and she's doing it in like the worst way I think she could. She should put it in a jar, I think, because her hands are bloody, the tapeworm is bloody, the bag is bloody. Everything she is touching is so bloody that you have to like triple bag it at this point.
yeah. And also, like,
It was like the most unproductive way to bag this tapeworm.
we get into this a little later when we get to the autopsy scene, but like, part of the tapeworm is still inside the body. There's like,
Mhm.
it's coming out of a stab wound. And like, so they're bagging it up, but then they're just going to leave the bag on top of the body because they don't take the tapeworm out until the autopsy. So like, while it's being transported to the morgue, do they just leave the little bagged up section on top of her stomach? Like,
They didn't think that through.
to contain it? Oh, I mean, I guess you got to contain it. Like, you can't just throw a tapeworm in
In a body bag.
a body bag. You got to contain it any way you can.
Could
but
you imagine if we opened a body bag and there was a tapeworm?
No, I don't want to. Mm-mm. I saw a gross video the other day of a bear with a tapeworm.
Ooh, ew.
He was just walking, living his life, but he had a tapeworm coming out of his butt. I probably
my
didn't
God.
need to talk about this, but it's all I'm thinking about.
Okay, back to the show.
Okay, glossing over that. It
So
was
it
right
looks
after
like-
we watched this episode, though, so my phone was definitely listening. My FBI agent was like, she's Googling tapeworms a lot.
We need to
Show
show
her
her more. So yeah, it looks like the Flora was stabbed and the tapeworm kind of like worked its way out of that wound. And the wound cut her intestine, and that's where tapeworms attach to their hosts.
So they're trying to figure out why Flora came back to the house at all, let alone to clean it on her own. So we're also dealing with Caleb escaping the psych ward, and they all assume that he's the one that killed Flora. He got out, went back to the house, and killed her. They realize that Flora and Caleb are trauma bonded, which is when an abused person forms some kind of strong emotional attachment with their abuser. And that is described by Jenny Cooper in the show. So Flora had been abused by Caleb for years. She even took on the family's hush money. So she went to go clean up after the murders. And in her mind, she was cleaning up after Caleb like she always did. She was protecting him after all these years. That's their assumption. And she might not be the only one protecting Caleb. They can't get a hold of Aaron at the moment. And the address that he originally gave to the police is fake. So at Flora's autopsy, they're cutting out the tapeworm and it looks like the tapeworm head is still attached to her intestines. I also wanted to talk about her intestines that they showed. So they looked pretty decent as far as intestines go. I feel like intestines are hard to replicate. And like, they still looked a little plasticky, but like, we'll give it a pass. But I liked how they showed her dissecting the intestine with, you start in the lumen, which is the hole, the space, and you just cut scissors down it and you like open up the intestine. So you can
like
see
reflecting
inside.
it open.
You open it up like that. Or as opposed to like, I feel like other shows, they just like, oh, here's the tapeworm and they reach inside and pull it out. But they showed like the process of her having to dissect the intestine and take it out and find where
this show just does everything so good.
And we're going to get into why later. Don't worry. So her time of death was was in the early morning. A green flag for this because they don't give an exact time. They give like a time frame. And you know, we've talked about this many times about how time of death estimation is based on a lot of factors. And you really give like a time frame in like a manner of hours, not it was at 1:02 a.m. No. So they also find that Flora had something going on with her liver, very similar to John's. And again, this liver looks fantastic. So it looks very similar to the masses they found on John's liver. And it doesn't look like cancer. It looks like a cyst. And Jenny recognizes it as tapeworm larvae. And so her and John both have tapeworms. And she this grossed me out. She pops the cyst like a pimple, and I don't know how they got it to do what it did, but they do a close-up of this cyst and you see her pop it and stuff oozes out and it's gnarly.
It was really gross.
And she goes, oh, it looks like anchovy paste, which she says is a classic descriptor for a tapeworm cyst.
Of course, everybody knows that.
Yeah, who doesn't know that, guys?
Yeah, Alice, what are you doing?
Well, I now have a new fear of tapeworms, so I wouldn't have known this because I hate them. So,
but like, what if the whole family had tapeworms at some point? So tapeworm larvae can travel to your organs and muscles, and they can cause these cysts. So they think that Caleb has a tapeworm cyst as well, specifically in his frontal lobe of his brain, which would explain why he can't control his emotions. And that's like extremely rare to have a cyst from a tapeworm in your brain. And they have a lead on where they think Caleb might be hiding out. And Jenny thinks that she needs to like go and explain all of this to him. And then maybe then he'll accept help.
I do want to say the reason I know we usually like give red flags to pathologists who are like going out of their way to speak to suspects because it's not their job. Jenny had experience with dissociative amnesia. So she's very emotionally involved in Caleb also probably having dissociative amnesia. They get into like, Jenny had amnesia about her sister's death. And so she like really relates to Caleb, which is also why Caleb asked to have her as like when he took somebody hostage. He's like, I want to talk to the coroner because she like related to him. So she's like emotionally involved in this. It goes beyond like her doing her job or what she thinks is her job when it's not. She's just emotionally, personally involved in this.
Beyond her main character energy.
Yeah, beyond. She's also very much main character energy, which she should be because she's the coroner of Coroner.
So they didn't find Caleb at this exact location, but on Jenny's way home, she gets a flat tire and she's looking around for help and she sees this sign and it says Christmas Cheer Factory, which is the same. It has like the same picture of the angel with wings from the ornament that we found at the first crime scene. What a coincidence.
Oh, who would have thought?
Of course, she's going to go check it out. And then this factory, it's abandoned and it's run down. And one of the other detectives from like this whole investigation, he's trying to get there to her, but he gets like distracted by a sound coming from the woods. And then we see that in the factory, Jenny finds Caleb.
Mm-hmm. So Jenny tries to explain this tapeworm thing to Caleb, and obviously he's not hearing it. He doesn't believe that this is the reason he allegedly murdered his parents. She says he could have gotten it from wild hog that they hunted or ate or some kind of sausage. And Caleb says that he's a vegetarian, so that can't be the cause of it. And then he explains that his dad never took him hunting. He only took Aaron hunting when they were younger.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. So Caleb then asked Jenny to leave, saying that Flora will come and get him just like she did when they were younger. Because I guess this was like whenever Caleb was in trouble, he would go here and Flora would come help him out. But Flora is dead and he didn't know that. He's obviously very upset when Jenny breaks the news to him. So he wasn't the one that killed Flora. Jenny realizes that Aaron is the one they're looking for and that he had the violent history and the urges. He was the one that killed Flora and his parents, and he let Caleb believe that it was him the whole time and take the fall for it. Caleb had amnesia this whole time because of what he witnessed, the trauma, and not because of what he did. So the other detective is still in the woods looking around for Aaron, but Aaron finds him and knocks him out.
And Caleb is finally remembering what happened on Christmas Eve, and it was Aaron all along who killed the parents. Caleb was in the next room and he saw everything. Caleb locks Jenny in another room at the abandoned factory, and Aaron comes back, and Caleb confronts him about Christmas Eve. He asks about Flora, and Aaron lies, saying that Flora said that she didn't want to come and that she doesn't love them anymore. But Caleb knows the truth, that Aaron was the one that killed her.
Yeah, that was like the moment when it like he really, really knew. He's like, okay.
Yeah.
He's lying about it now. Yeah.
And Aaron goes on to tell him that when their dad took him hunting, the dad would hurt Aaron. He would like send bullets his way, trying to toughen him up, and that their mom was like new and she was not in on it, but she knew everything that was happening and didn't stop it.
She was way too passive in the abuse.
Yeah. So they should be better off now that they're both dead. Jenny yells to get let out, and they unlock the door, and she starts defending herself against Aaron. She hits him with a pipe and sends him into a seizure. They call an ambulance, and that's basically kind of how the show ends. They did get the real murderer in the end.
Yeah.
But then I feel like I was expecting more.
I know. The tapeworm twist sent me down a rabbit hole of Google searches that we're going to talk about. Yeah, it was a good episode. A lot of it dealt with Jenny's personal stuff, which we didn't get into because it's not.
There was so much family drama happening.
Yeah, but it parallels what's happening to Caleb because she also had a dissociative amnesia episode. She's the one that helps Caleb remember what he actually saw in the end because of what she went through recently, and it's a whole big thing. I learned this episode that this show has my least favorite trope of a doctor who was in a different field and then something happened to them and they settled for pathology, and I'm very upset because I do enjoy this show.
This show is different.
I don't know the story, but I was looking into something about the show, and there was a brief summary of it, and it was like Jenny Cooper, renowned ER doc, had tragedy strike, and so she becomes a pathologist. And I'm like, damn it. Like, why can't it just be somebody who always wanted to do this?
Like Ducky from NCIS. He always wanted to do
it. Ducky from NCIS. There's Ducky is like, we should do NCIS again soon. I miss Ducky.
Yeah.
He's an OG. Yeah.
It's been too long.
It has been. It's been too long since we visited our pal Ducky with his bow ties. Little bow ties. Love him. So this episode obviously got us thinking about tapeworms, or at least got me thinking about tapeworms and how horrifying they are. So I don't know.
Everyone's thinking about tapeworms.
But I didn't know that they could affect your brain. Don't love that. So we got curious and we started Googling tapeworm in brains. Or again, I started Googling tapeworm in brains. And my search history got weird. And I found an insane true story. So this is the story of Luis Ortiz, who survived having a tapeworm surgically removed from his brain. So in 2015, Luis was in the hospital for 3 months, but doesn't remember much of his visit. He was suffering from debilitating headaches and vomiting, and he was taken to Napa Valley Hospital in California, where doctors discovered a live, and I quote from the article, still wriggling tapeworm inside of his brain.
Ew,
full body chills.
Freaked
just
me
like,
out. Ugh.
I know. Something out of Alien.
Yeah. Ooh, no, I don't like that. The doctors weren't sure how long the tapeworm had been there, but it would likely move from a different part of his body and lodged into a ventricle ventricle in his brain. Some activities that can lead to tapeworms include swimming in infected lakes, eating uncooked pork or dirty fruits and vegetables. Now I'm really self-conscious and scared of all of the fruits and vegetables that I eat.
I was just going to say, the show made me feel safe because I'm a vegetarian, but
not safe.
I swim in lakes. No. I'm scared now.
But Lewis did not recall doing any of this prior to his experience with his symptoms. Tapeworm infections are most common in Latin America, Asia, and Africa, and patients can get a tapeworm infection when they eat or come in with contact with food, water, or surfaces that may have been contaminated with tapeworm eggs. The infection can lead to death, and when it results in cysts that develop and spread out to the brain and spinal cord.
I don't love that. So Lewis was told that if he had delayed going to the hospital by even 30 minutes, he wouldn't have survived. Lewis said his symptoms began after spending the day with his friends skateboarding, and he blacked out a few times while skateboarding, so he decided to go home, which probably a good call. And at home, his headache got much worse, and he began vomiting, which is when he blacked out again, and his parents took him to the hospital, where a CT scan showed that he had swelling in his brain. So the doctors had to relieve the pressure in his brain by drilling a small hole in his head for drainage. And after that, they were able to perform an X-ray, which showed a 1 centimeter diameter cyst. And a closer look showed that it was a scolex, which, if you don't know, because I didn't know, is the end of a tapeworm that has that little sucker thing that attaches to the body. So they just saw this sucker thing on his brain.
Ew. Lewis started to decline rapidly at the hospital, and operating was the only option to save him. Neurosurgeon Dr. Soren Singal created a map of Lewis's brain, and they used a brain navigating system and endoscopic-like device to reach the cyst. Another doctor described that this procedure as if it was standing at the end of a 20-foot room and having to use a straw to reach a small point at the other end of the room. Dr. Singal was able to perform the surgery successfully, and Lewis was saved. He was left with memory loss and needed cognitive therapy and rehabilitation, but was released from therapy a few months after the incident. And he said, quote, "I'm just happy to be alive. I got lucky." And we got this information from an LA Times article from November 2015 titled by
Oh, sorry, it's Veronica. I had a typo.
Titled by Veronica Rocha, Live Tapeworm Still Wrangling Removed from California Man's Brain, which will be linked in our show notes.
That's a nightmare. I'm so glad he's okay.
I just how? How did this occur?
He doesn't know either. He doesn't.
I need to know.
Which scares me. Because I'm like, how do I avoid this? I don't know. Oh my God. Yeah, the show made it seem like it was, well, she knew they had experienced hunting. So that's why she was like, oh, maybe it's the meat that you ate. And he's like, no, I don't eat meat. But I don't know. Clean your fruits and veggies, everybody. Properly cook your meat. And
don't go swimming in lakes.
But it's so nice sometimes. I like swimming lanes. Don't drink the water while you're swimming in the lake. So, if you thought that was the only crazy story we had for you, you're wrong. Merry Christmas. We have another crazy story.
Oh, wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more. I had to talk about this because I was looking into amnesia. Also, I wanted to know more about retrograde and dissociative amnesia. And I found out Harrison Ford, yes, Indiana Jones, Han Solo, has spoken about his experience with retrograde amnesia. So in 2015, he appeared on Jimmy Kimmel wearing a hot dog costume. I just wanted to add that detail because the way the article I read, the sentence was very misleading. It was like, Harrison Ford describes getting in a plane crash while wearing a hot dog costume. And I was like, was he in a plane crash while wearing a hot dog costume?
He was driving a plane in a hot dog costume.
And I was like, why was he in a hot dog costume in the plane? I was really confused. And then he was on Jimmy Kimmel and it was a Halloween episode. he was wearing a hot dog costume.
Oh.
And Jimmy Kimmel was very funnily dressed as Leia from Star Wars, which is great. So he told the story of how he was flying his vintage 2-seater fighter plane and crash landed in a golf course. He was experienced mechanical failure, and he said, I remember not all of it. I remember some of it. I remember the engine stopping. I remember that part well. And then I remember the tower, and I remember their suggestion. Their suggestion was that I take the normal route to land, and I knew I wasn't going to do that, so I said no. And that's the last thing I remember until 5 days afterwards. Harrison spent a month in the hospital with a large head laceration, a broken pelvis, and a broken ankle. But he seemed okay now. I don't know if he ever really remembered that 5-year period. I was like, there's not much to go on here because he doesn't really remember it. But he was able to make light of the situation with Jimmy Kimmel because Kimmel asked if he yelled "for" before crash landing, and Harrison responded that he yelled "Ford" because it's his name. It's funny. How crazy is that, though?
Insane of a story. Oh my God.
How crazy is that? He just crash landed a plane. And he doesn't remember it.
That also makes me remember Frankie Muniz, like he had a traumatic event and he doesn't remember like being on Malcolm in the Middle at all.
Oh my God. Was it a traumatic brain injury or was it like dissociative emotional?
I don't know. I have to look it up. I don't know off the top of my head, but
I would imagine if it's like being a child star famously isn't a good time. Like a lot of child stars will tell you.
I think it may have been a motorcycle accident.
Was
I'm
it?
not 100%
You're right.
sure. Yeah.
I think you're right.
He races
He's like
now.
a NASCAR driver.
Yeah. Oh my God. So he was in a motorcycle accident? And
I believe that's what it is. Not 100% sure.
Oh, wow.
And he was also he's also like a drummer of a band too, I think.
What?
Oh my God. I knew he like didn't do TV anymore, but he was still doing a ton of cool stuff.
I didn't know he was
Muniz.
a drummer. I just knew he was a driver. That's crazy.
A Renaissance
he doesn't
man.
remember anything about Malcolm in the Middle.
That's crazy. Because that's like, he's literally Malcolm. He's the star of the show.
He's in the middle.
He is in the middle.
Yeah.
Doesn't remember it though. That's wild. I had not. Now I'm going to tell my own stupid story that isn't anywhere near close to this because it wasn't traumatic at all. But it was 2018 and I was living in Buffalo still. And I got picked to throw the first pitch at a Buffalo Bison's minor league baseball game. And I'm a huge baseball fan. I'm a softball player. So I was very, very excited to do this. But I was also very nervous because it was a huge crowd. I get up and I get up on the mound and I'm super nervous. They gave me the ball and I throw the ball. No brag. I did really well. But I see the ball hit the catcher's mitt. And then the next thing I remember is I'm standing at my seat singing the national anthem. I think I was just like so stressed out. And then I was like so relieved it was over that I'm like, wait, how did I do? Did I do okay? And then everybody's like, what? I was like, I don't know why I was so stressed about it. But like the next thing I remember was the national anthem a little while later. There was fully another person who pitched after me. Like they had multiple people. They picked 2 of us and there was another guy pitching after me. I don't remember seeing his pitch. I don't remember walking back. I don't know why. And I hadn't been drinking. So it wasn't that before anybody says anything. But I remember seeing that I did okay pitching and then I was like, whew. And then I must have just been riding high on the cloud of not whiffing it.
You really have the wildest stories.
It's really not that crazy. Harrison Ford crashed a plane and I threw a baseball.
Do you remember that episode of Full House where they had the one
Michelle falls off the horse?
Michelle falls off the horse and she like has amnesia for a few days.
Yes. I do. Okay.
I don't know why I think about that episode constantly.
It was such a crazy episode because that was one of the episodes where they got both Mary-Kate and Ashley because she like falls asleep and then like has a dream and like she sees herself and it was like they got both the twins in one scene. Shows like that, I feel like amnesia was a common theme in like sitcoms for some reason because it was something that I was worried about. Like that I
50 First Dates.
Like,
they did a whole movie on that.
I was something where I was like, is this gonna happen? It was the same thing with like quicksand. I was like, is this something we need to be talking about?
People coming up to you asking if you want to buy drugs. That never happens.
No one ever comes up to me offering me free drugs. Nobody I
offers me
know has had
candy.
amnesia. Like, yeah, I feel like it was such a common theme. I was so worried about it. And then also like Bermuda Triangle. I feel like everybody was talking about it when I was younger.
I was like, oh my God, I hope I never go there.
I know. I was like, why aren't we doing something? We should be doing more about the amnesia and the quicksand and the Bermuda Triangle. Why aren't we?
I'm more concerned than everybody else.
I usually am more concerned. Stupid thing.
So, what exactly is retrograde amnesia? It affects the memory formed before the onset of amnesia. So, someone who experiences this trauma after a traumatic brain injury may not be able to remember what happened years or even decades before the injury.
So that might be like Malcolm in the middle.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
Things that can cause retrograde amnesia include traumatic injuries, seizures, serious illness, stroke, degenerative brain disease, and probably some other things there too. But it can be temporary, permanent, or progressive depending on like what caused it. With this type of amnesia, it usually affects facts instead of skills. So someone might forget whether they own a car or when they bought it, but they can still remember how to drive a car.
I think that's so interesting. That like
Our
certain
brains
skills that you just
Our
won't.
brain really fascinates me.
It's so fascinating.
Like how it works.
So dissociative or psychogenic amnesia, which was addressed in this episode with Jenny and Caleb, is rare and caused by emotional shock, not trauma to the brain. So it's different. It is a psychological response to trauma, often a violent crime or a violent type of trauma. And this kind of amnesia is usually temporary. Symptoms include being unable to remember the thing that happened before the traumatic event or being able to recall the traumatic event or any kind of autobiographical information. So like Caleb, he asked if he missed brunch. He didn't remember that it was Christmas or that it was Christmas Eve or that he had seen this horrible thing happen to his parents. So it's really interesting. And we got this info from an article on healthline.com written by Corrine O'Keefe Osborne and medically reviewed by Timothy J. Legg, PhD, PsychD. And we'll link in our show notes if you want to read more about it, because they get into also antegrade amnesia, which affects your ability to form new memories. Mm-hmm. Which is, no, that's not 50 First Dates. No. Is she able to form new memories in that one?
She has retrograde amnesia.
She can't remember anything. That's right. The brain is wild.
There's another thing that we definitely wanted to talk about in this episode that like we obviously love looking at all these organ scenes and like how accurate the organs look. And that is like a big thing with this show. So we found a discussion between Serinda Swan, who plays Jenny Cooper, and Morwen Brebner, the showrunner, and Adrienne Mitchell, the executive producer, where they discuss the research that went into the show and some of their favorite props. And I'm like obsessed with all of this.
Yeah. So Adrienne, the executive producer, starts off by saying that all of the aspects of death they explore in the show really made her desensitized to gore. She says she used to never be able to watch like hospital shows, but now she can. She says it's fascinating to explore what the body can reveal about death and how complex it is, and how for the coroner, it's the main place she gets all her clues. And she says, I had a hard time watching hospital shows before this series, but now I'm fine. Show me a tapeworm squiggling out of a body and I'm fine. I'm fine with that. You shouldn't be fine with that.
No one should be fine with that.
No one should be fine with that. But I think it's interesting how do you think you've become desensitized when you see like gross stuff on TV, like fake gore?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm desensitized in real life.
The blank stare that you said that with. I'm sorry. I know exactly what you mean because I feel like I am too. But there's like, I'm desensitized.
I mean, we are trauma bonded.
Well,
so
not in the sense the show says, because we're not abusers to each other. But we've seen, it's more like, oh my God, what was the plane, the Tom Hanks movie where the plane crashed in the Hudson? Sully. So that actual incident, a lot of those people became really, really close. They were strangers, but they went through this huge traumatic thing together, and like that's going to bond you.
Mhm.
And when I would say we kind of joke about it, but like we've seen some traumatic stuff together, and like I can't talk to anybody else about it but you, because
Even our boss knows. Like we were at a meeting the other day, and Alice sat across the table, and I was like, "Oh my god, you're so far away!" And he was like, "What, are you guys trauma bonded?" And I was like, "Yeah, we
We're like,
are."
maybe you saw. Well, he does see some of the shit that we see, but yeah, gotta have your
We
people.
see
man.
the brunt of everything.
Yeah, we do.
So back to this article, Morwen added that she also feels desensitized and sometimes gets so caught up in her search for the show that she had to take a step back and remember that these things are real and that they can really happen. She stated, "Death is not abstract, and I think you have to bring yourself back to the truth of it. It really is an interesting place to live. Sometimes I've been in the room with a consultant when we were talking about a particularly gruesome death, and suddenly a heaviness comes over you and you have to take a break. We try to be respectful of the truth of death. We try to find the humor in parts of it."
I thought it was interesting when she said that part about the consultants, and she'll be talking about something with them, and then suddenly it'll hit her. Because
Mhm.
I feel like I've been on similar to the consultants ends of things, where like somebody who isn't familiar with this field will be so curious, and they'll like come up and ask me all about it, which like I love. I used to be that person too. And then sometimes I'll get like too real with it, and I'm like, oh no, did I just I totally just brought the mood down.
And traumatized you.
I'm desensitized, and now I made it a bummer. But yeah, it can definitely be heavy, and I think it is important to take a break from it, even when you work in a field, even though we love it so
Mhm.
much. Like, I genuinely think this is what I was meant to do in life, but you got to take a break.
We all need mental health days.
Yeah, for sure. So Serinda, the star of the show, brought up how they always have a pathologist on set to make sure that they keep things as real as possible. So this is why everything looks amazing. So Morwen adds that as a writer, it feels like a huge win to her when she brings an idea to the pathologist and they give her a yes, even if it's a crazy idea. She said, the crazy thing too is you'll ask, could this blank outlandish thing happen? And they'll say, yeah, totally. That happens. And you're like, I thought we were just making up crazy things. Like, no, like crazy. I mean, these shows sometimes take it to extremes. Like with a few episodes ago, the pufferfish poison,
Mhm.
the person walking out of the morgue and nobody noticing. That was a little insane. But
The computer bursting into flames.
all of that was the same episode. That's a little much. But yeah, we see crazy stuff sometimes.
And when asked about which autopsy dummies were most eye-catching, Serinda brought up one episode in season 3 that revolves around a brain, aka this episode. She said that for the show, she had experienced seeing an autopsy and never thought that they would be able to replicate it on scene, but they made it work. She was surprised that they were able to replicate a realistic scalp peel for their show. And she also said that one of the brains in the show, they used oatmeal, bananas, and raisins. And I have to imagine that this was a decomp brain if they're using oatmeal.
Yeah, that had to have been a decomp brain because that had to just be a mush, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you've said you've compared decomposing brains on this show to my favorite food, mashed potatoes. It surprisingly hasn't ruined mashed potatoes for me.
It looks like lumpy mashed potatoes.
It does sometimes.
I'm
It depends.
so sorry to everybody getting ready for the holiday dinners. This episode is coming out on Christmas.
Yes. Also, I can't see the slides now.
But she said a lot of their props are actually made from edible material, which is equally cool and equally creepy.
Yeah, I thought that was fun to note because we say this a lot in the morgue. When we are trying to compare things visually and we're trying to describe it to somebody who's never seen it, we'll describe it in food terms.
Yeah.
There's literally a thing called nutmeg liver because it'll look like nutmeg on your liver, and that's
bone dust smells like Fritos.
Bone dust does smell like Fritos. That's an unfortunate truth. And I didn't realize it until somebody told me that, and now I can never smell Fritos.
I can never eat Fritos.
I still do, but I think about it differently now. Or what is it? Oh my god, there was someone said something. Oh, like sometimes like I mean maggots obviously look like rice. Sometimes people will call it disco rice because they move around in it.
Oh, I know. I don't like that.
That's the one thing. Like usually food comparisons don't get me, but the rice sometimes gets me. Sometimes I need a break from rice. I've mentioned that before. I've had to take a break from risotto, and I love risotto. There was something that we've compared to Parmesan cheese, and that grossed out an intern.
What do you do that for?
I forget what it was. I want to say it was something insect related. Like, was it beetle scat?
It was beetle, yeah.
Yeah, so it was beetle feces. Will look like either wood shavings or shredded Parmesan cheese. Yeah.
So when asked how she feels about working with prop corpses, Serinda says she absolutely loves it. She says, quote, "It's so weird, but actually what's crazy is we live inside our bodies for however long we get gifted on this planet, and yet we don't really understand or know what's going on the inside. I saw lungs for the first time. It was like, that's what lungs look like. And we all have an idea of what it looks like and how it works, but what you put in it and what comes out of it, like all of these things is just like mind boggling. And now because of the show, I obviously know these things, but it's so bizarre to me that I know more about material objects than I do about my own body. So when I get to work with these fake cadavers, our pathologist on set laughs so hard because I get so excited," end quote. And we got all of this information from a dstv.com article behind the scenes, which will be linked in our show notes if you guys want to read more. This is a really interesting article. I think if anybody is interested in like forensics, like what goes on behind the scenes of these shows, like definitely read more about this article.
I want to be a consultant on one of these shows. So bad.
Somebody pay me to be a consultant.
Pay us.
I'll do it for free.
Preferably, I'd like to be paid, but yeah, I'd do it for free too.
I would just love to be on the title card there.
I know. Yeah, just give me a credit. Yeah. I want to know where they get the faked cadavers or if they're like custom made for their show specifically. Because when I was in school and even in our morgue, we have like teaching cadavers and they can make some that are pretty realistic, but even the organs in those look fake. But like the outside will look so real. But was it you that told me what they use in Grey's Anatomy for organs?
Oh, they use like pig and cow organs.
That's what I'm wondering if they do in this show too, for like the liver or something, because it's crazy, like how real.
I'm gonna go on a deep dive.
Yeah. So to end this Christmas episode, we tallied a total of 6 green flags and no red flags. We were feeling holly jolly, so we were nice with this episode. So in our opinion, this episode of Coroner does pass in terms of forensic accuracy. Thanks for listening, guys. And you can find us on Instagram at Inside The Morgue Pod, and feel free to DM us with whatever you want to talk about, any show suggestions or any topics you want to us to talk about in our minis. We're also looking for like any kind of comments from you guys. So please hit us up or comment on our YouTube on YUNKJunk. So yeah, just let us know what you want us to talk about. We'll be back next time with a brand new dissection.
Merry Christmas and happy holidays,
Merry
everybody.
Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Bye.
Bye.
YUNKJunk!